Congratulations on the film. I'm a sucker for low-key sci-fis like this that use the genre to paint something that's so packed with fascinating themes about humanity, identity, artificial intelligence, and so much more. Was there a particular thematic area that you took to the most with your own interests?
I love what you're saying, the themes that you're dropping. I will pick one of them up. You said humanity. I think
Yeah.
what excited and fascinated me about this script was when I first read it, it was fascinating, but it was also frightening in the best way, I think, because it
Yeah.
seems like a cautionary tale of sorts. And what we really leaned into in bringing it to life and, collaborating with James Bird, our director, Stephen Paul, our producer, was exploring the fact that when I read the script on the page, at first at least, I found myself empathizing more with a lot of the companions, the robot characters, than some of the humans. In this, and we kind of ran with that theme with the fact, like, okay, when you pour so much into technology, when you turn we have at least an infancy of companions right here. These are our companions.
Yeah.
When you pour so much into that, where does our own humanity go? Do we strip ourselves of that in a sense? And it made me think about the fact that our phones are, to many of us, not everyone, but our phones are glued to our sides, and it's our dopamine on demand. We can get comfort, we can get pleasure, we can get whatever we want from it. We want to play a song that gives us a certain feeling. We can have it at our fingertips. We want advice, we want whatever. It's just all there. And when we lose our phone, we freak out. Like, it's just, to me, it was an interesting, example brought to life through this story. And there's many scenes too, and I'm curious what one stuck out to you where that kind of bubbled up a bit. When he, for instance, there's that intimacy settings bit where he has to literally program how she will react to him, how she will feel with him. Like, that to me was one of the scenes that stood out very much with all of these themes going on. But I'm curious what stood out to you.
There's quite a few. The one that comes top of mind is the one where they're pretty much just discussing the arc of man throughout history. It's between, I'll just say, two characters to
Yes.
to leave a little bit of mystery there for those who may be watching. But that was pretty interesting to me because you mentioned all those things, and there's all these examples all throughout the film that kind of do these deep dives into humanity. Has it shifted how you view humanity at this point, or even your relationship with your phone? Are you thinking about, there's a lot of compelling ideas here, I need to start trying to put some of these ideas into practice, maybe?
Definitely. I mean, one thing that you're now inspiring my head that stood out. I love Greek mythology. I go on about this all the time. But when I first read it, it made me think about, to your point, how much hasn't really changed. There's one of my favorite myths is the story of Pandora, and how she was essentially, if you think about that story, she's like the ancient robot. She's like the first robot story, because she was formed with earth and clay, and the four winds were breathed into her, and then all the gods gave her different gifts. So Poseidon gave her a pearl necklace so she would never drown. Apollo, I believe, was the one who taught her to sing and to play the lyre. And then Athena clothed her, taught her to weave with her hands. Zeus gave her a deceitful mind and cunning and a crafty tongue. Aphrodite gave her grace and desire, all the feminine beauty, those qualities. And then Hera gave her the most dangerous, it's actually said to be the most dangerous weapon, really the trait of all, which was curiosity. And how that was the first human mortal woman, and immediately she was wicked in nature, immediately she was awful and just brought on all of the terror unto men. And that's the genesis of women, and that myth itself to me sums up so much, and how dangerous curiosity is in a woman's mind. And in the sense of Meredith's story, how the more curious she gets, the more clever, in the sense of just discovering, is it memories, or discovering singularity and emotion, identity in and of itself. That's when it's like, no, alert, wipe her, dumb her down, put her back, deprogram her. She can't be human-like, she's just got to be wife-like. There's a distinction. Like, I just think that is such an interesting axis to look at it, and stood out to me, and again made me excited to tell the story and be involved in it. So I don't know. Yeah.
What about the technology aspect of it?
Well, of course that. I mean, I think I always try to take breaks, and this definitely made us all conscious of it, especially on set. You know, the fact that these are essentially our pseudo companions of sorts. But yeah, I think a mark of a good story, you know, with Shakespeare and all the other things, is when the themes are universal and they stand through the test of time. And especially now, if it can make the audience uncomfortable or make them think about these things or challenge a perspective or challenge, you know, the norm, I think it's a good thing, and it's worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. As you mentioned, like Meredith is such a cool character. Was there a particular launching point for you in playing her and having the greatest access to her? Was it the haircut? Was it how she dressed? Was it a certain line of dialogue? What gave you the best access to her and knowing who she is and how she thinks?
What's really interesting is I think there were many facets to her that I tried to dive into. Yes, there's a physical aspect, which meant going to the gym, keeping myself in tip-top shape. That's a passion of mine. It's like my sport. So I was like, oh, this is great. It weaves right in. So hair, body, all of that was its own, in especially detailing, you know, the way I held my body and moved. Also studying animals. Is she more like a gazelle? Is she like a bird? And the way her head moved, like every little thing. Also controlling, doing the antithesis of what I would do with a human character. You know, you can be slouchy, you can clear your throat, you swallow, all of these things. We were very like, oh no, I swallowed there, like the blinks, everything was super. We were really careful about, like, James and Stephen would help me, like, oh, I see that there, we want it to be very seamless, we want her to be seen very seamless and smooth and everything, so I'd make sure it was very graceful. And so the physicality was a really fun challenge in opening that door. And then the rest of it is thinking, I love language, you know, thinking of what is this character's language. Well, it's code, it's digital, it's mechanics. And then how does her language evolve? Because the more she's spending time with humans, she's observing and learning. You know, AI is constantly progressing and studying how to be human-like, right? That is the goal, some could argue. So to me, at first, humor, what is a sense of humor? What is sarcasm? All of these things maybe go over her head, but then she banks them, words she's never heard before, like feel, champagne, all of this stuff she banks in her database and then can cross-reference later. Also studying people, you know, her whole programming is to please her husband. So it starts out studying, okay, does he frow his eyebrow when he is upset? Does the octave of his voice change when he's lying? So then later on she's able to discern more. Okay, he says that he's happy, but what I'm learning from my observations and from the data that I've been banking is that he's not. So it's like, it's just getting cleverer and smarter in how that language and how she receives language, how she receives all of the external information, how that evolves her character and how she processes information. So I thought of her like a computer, and then let that percentage of how much more human-like she will get grow, depending on whether she's getting deprogrammed or not, without giving too much away.
Sure.
If that makes sense. So we played with percentages a lot. James and I would be like, okay, so today this scene, I think you'd be more on the 40% range or this percent range. Does she ever get to be a full percentage? She never gets to be fully human, but it was fun to play with those levels and modulate with that. So again, it was a really cool challenge. And again, a lot of nuance to play with.
Gotcha. So when you were first starting out and maybe reading the script and you start developing that language, like you said, and figuring out those percentages, how obviously there's the larger movements like walking and just simple tasks that you may do around the house, but then there's like very subtle ones that were kind of fun to tune into, like her opening up a drawer, or the way that she sits when she's at the table when she's talking to someone. So how much did you think about ahead of time, this is what I need to do in order to convey that, what her language is? And then how much did you figure out on set, being like, okay, let's dial this back, let's figuring out those knobs with Mr. Bird?
I think a lot of it is preparation before, meditating on all of these things, thinking about, again, the mechanic side of her, how does her computer brain work? And then it just gets to the point where you get to the day and just try to kind of forget it all and just let the the great thing is the production design, the sets that we had, the people helping out on set, it created the world very quickly. It was quite visceral. So it made it rather easy to sink into that world, also wearing the clothing and making sure my posture, I am a Kampouris, that hunchback, and so I gotta like keep it, make sure I'm very graceful in how I move and how I find her physicality. But the big thing is, you're right, the littlest things, like blinking. There were so many times I was like trying to be conscious of how I blink, that it's not too human-like, that I don't add in little filler words too, like we say, okay, likes, her language has to be there's a rhythm, there's a cadence that can modulate as she gets more used to, being around humans, and the more comfortable she gets and the more she's more human-like she's evolving to be. But it was really the little things like this, what I just, like she wouldn't tuck her hair behind her ear, she wouldn't do a little scratch. So it was being just very mindful and aware of every inch of my body, which was a really fun thing to get into, which is why, again, working out was helpful in just like all mind body awareness, but also having done Broadway, doing Dangerous Liaisons, when we worked with corsets and full body coaches, that helped, that experience helped in approaching this role very much. So yeah, it was definitely all about the details.
Have you felt any cooler than the Halloween portion of this film and what you're wearing and how it's lit? Like, I wanted that sequence to go on much longer than it did.
You liked it? You liked the look and everything?
Yeah. I was like, ooh, this is great.
That was fun. It was such a fun like departure, because we've got like the 50s housewives this was a purposeful style going on with her fashion, and then you've got the skeleton look in the dream world, which again I find a really cool concept, that they allow the AIs to dream, because that alone is like a symbol of consciousness and of a soul and singularity. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, that was a fun shoot. Freezing cold 17-day shoot in Vancouver, but we did it. I still can't believe we managed that in that much time, little window. But yeah, those were fun scenes to shoot.
Speaking of the dreams, have you had any strange dreams since doing this? What sort of odd rabbit holes have you gone down as a result of doing this film?
Oh my gosh, where do I begin? I mean, I do have strange dreams, then I forget them. But I will say that I now look at AI and just that whole topic and the singularity of itself completely differently now, having worked on a project where we delved into it so much. And I think that this movie does it in a way that hasn't been seen before. So I don't know, it definitely has changed my perspective. And there was a lot of that at play. But I'm curious for you, because you're a movie buff and you see all this, how did you think in this approach with companions? Because it's not quite, I feel like it stands apart from other genre takes on this matter.
Yeah, it's fun watching it because there's like little details here that I'm sure Mr. Bird's like referencing. It's like hard to get around the fact that, you got Blade Runner and the way that the dusters that they wear and the way that they shoot the night skyline and things like that. Like, that's all like really fun references. But yeah, there's the way that it explores the dream world and this kind of like I don't know, I'll just reference Inception. So there's like little things here and there, these little twists that I found really good, and I think the way that they all work together makes it a really original piece. So I thought it was great. Yeah,
we had a lot of creative minds that melded together well, I think, because James, he had a ton of cool ideas that went into even the little aspects of nature and the leaves, and like and he'd give me little tidbits to kind of chew on and thinking about her character, and okay, here's how she views like the leaves that are falling through in the wind and the sound of that. Here's how she processes this information. This is how she a lake of water, which she, in one of the scenes she's looking at, is seen to her, water is like, and you see her play with water, and it's like it represents life. Water is life. And what does that do to her? What does that kind of spark for her? But I will proudly say, Preston, no CGI used on my performance. Okay, that was all 100% real. Every aspect, from the physical to the mental, everything.
Well, great. Congratulations.
I remember everything.